Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 2100 hours Central European Time. My name is Geerte Frenken, and this show is all about the topic of protective mothers and their children. So, what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive father by many means necessary, which is an uphill battle in today's global corrupt family court system that thrives on paternal entitlement. Protective mother Marlena Frayji lost custody of her three children to her abusive ex-husband due to false allegations of abuse that led to a 10-year criminal protection order preventing any contact between her and her kids. And today she is a guest on Hell is for Children, and I'm so grateful to have you on. Hi, Marlena.
Hello, I'm so grateful to be here.
Well, your case is pretty extreme. You have a 10-year criminal protection order preventing you from having any contact with your kids. Take us to the beginning of your situation. I'm going to assume that one day you were happily married and things changed.
Well, correct, except I was never really happily married, unfortunately. It was not a good marriage. Um, it it was a marriage, a more of a father-daughter relationship, or a management employee. There was not really any affection, except in public to look good, and I worked hard, and that was the only thing that was acceptable, and even that was never enough. There was never enough. But there were cameras in the home, in every room. Um, and he had a monitor on his cell phone in the office, which I found out later after separation. I had no idea that that was happening. And so he always knew when I sat down for one moment, when I would get a phone call. I was called at least 15 times a day, and it was never, hi, how are you? It was, did you do this or that? I mean, literally, I felt like an employee that could never satisfy my boss. And the kids, same thing. He expected an awful lot out of them. So I couldn't take it anymore, and I wanted to get a divorce, and I told him. But I had no access to funds, being married so young and being more of a tendency to comply. Um, since I was a child, I was that way. It was just easier. Um, I just complied to everything, and he did everything, and took care of everything, and I never really had access to grown-up things, a checking account, a credit card. So I began to sleep in this room downstairs, and all the while he was preparing for uh, a successful divorce for his side, and I had no idea. So he one night it all broke out when I was texting someone that I'd met at the gym. I'd never had an affair or anything. I mean, warranted, I should not have been texting another man, but he caught me. He was very jealous. And he'd always had access to my email, to internet. He probably knew I was texting him what I was saying, everything now. So anyway, he grabs my phone. I had my daughter, she was 4 at the time, from me, and he starts to hit me and punch me and kick me and tell in front of the children that you're never going to see your mom again. Look at your mom. She's a whore. She's a slut. We don't need her. We're going to do fine without her. Well, I was horrified because he'd never really acted in that capacity before in 24 years. He'd done some things, but not like that. So I wanted to stop. My kids were being traumatized, and I called the police. And the police came, but at the same time, my mother was on the phone, and she told me, if he gets arrested, his life is going to be bad. I mean, do you really want him arrested? And I just, I didn't want him to get arrested, so I lied to the police, and I they saw like little red marks on my face, and I was thrown out of the house naked. My ex-husband gave me some clothes when he knew I called the police. And I knew that once the police were there, he would calm down, because image is everything to him. And he would not want the neighbors to know that something was wrong. So I told him that nothing happened. He didn't hit me. He didn't call me any names, and everything was okay. But I was a little terrified because I had, I was talking to another man, and it made him upset, and he'd never done that. And the police, they hung out for a little bit, made sure everything was okay, and then talked to us both and left. Well, the next day we were all supposed to go to my mother's house for 3 days, and I had everybody packed and ready to go. Everything was packed. And he said, why don't you just take the kids by yourself? I just need time to think about things. And I thought, okay. And he goes, go ahead and go to the store. And as I'm driving off, literally, he throws just my bag in the car, and I did not think anything of it. I just didn't think anything of that. On my way home, I discovered that the garage door opener that's always on the visor is gone. And I never had a key to the house or the mailbox. That's how I got in the house. And so on my way home, I said, okay, I'm ready to pick up the kids and go to my mom's. And he says, and I was intimidated by him. And he said, you're not coming home, and you're not taking the kids. The elders are here, and they know what you did. And out of intimidation, I didn't want to go home. And I was real naive and being non-cynical. I'm not a cynical person or paranoid person, and I just trusted that it was going to be okay. I was mom, and no one was going to take my kids from me.
Now, when you're saying the elders, what are you referring to?
The elders of our church, and we were involved in a fundamental Christian religion, and which teaches that the husband is head of the household and wives are to be in subjection, but it teaches it in a way that, he ran with it. It was, he did it. He was overdoing it. It was, they don't teach what he did. So anyway, out of intimidation, I just went to my mom's, and I was there for 3 days. I came back to the house, and everything was locked, and I couldn't get in, and he called the police. And I was trying to open the window with the little cat. This is the most horrendous act of violence I ever did in the entire 5 years, or, in my life. I was trying to open the window with the candelabra, and he came to the window, and I threw the candelabra, and it hit the corner of the window. It didn't break anything. But of course, that was embellished into this huge, thing. And the police came and told me that I would have to go to court and file an ex parte to get in the house. And they'd just been there the night before. They knew exactly what he was doing. They were very disappointed for me. But, it's nothing really they could do. And so I went to court, and he had filed for a restraining order. It was ex parte. I had no idea anything about restraining orders. I didn't know anybody who had a restraining order. It being in the religion I was in, my associates, my social life was them. Divorce is very rare. Things like that are unheard of. I just didn't know about restraining orders. And so he files one and gets it with, the judge doesn't even hear me. And he's exaggerating everything and making it look terrible. His attorney is, actually. I didn't have an attorney. And the judge literally just in the middle of him talking says, would you like a restraining order? And gives it to him, And so it was so, I didn't take it seriously. There was no evidentiary hearing, nothing formal. I did not take it seriously. And, but I didn't want to contact him. I was trying to get away from him because he was contacting me all the time and knowing where I was at. I had GPS on my car, and I didn't know how to get it off of there by the time I discovered it. So he knew where I was at all times. And from then on, I had supervised visits, and he orchestrated a supervised visit across the street from the house in the park, and I thought that was odd. But I had
so hold on. So at this point, you're locked out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
He has a restraining order against you,
mm-hmm.
and the family court judge awarded full custody of your children to him?
Temporary full custody, yes. And then I had supervised visits, and I was living with my mom 3.5 hours away. No income. I'd been a housewife. I was locked out of all the bank accounts. I had not a dime. I was basically supported by my mother and her husband, for that entire year until trial. Anyway, where was I with that? But, okay. So we had arranged that I would get my things that day after the supervised visit. And I have emails. He's saying, you need to get your things. I'm going to throw them away. And I needed my things anyway. I was hesitant, and so I called the police. And I said, I need a backup because I'm here to get my things after a visit with my children. And I just want to make sure everything's okay. So the police don't show up. So I start to drive by the house on my way out of the park. My then 9-year-old runs down the driveway and said, Mom, stop. Dad's going to let you get your things. I rolled down the window. I said, Raina, I have to go now. I'm going to be back next week. And then I see my ex-husband in the driveway with the boxes of my things in the driveway, and he waves for me to come up. And I thought, well, and I just did it. I shouldn't have done that, but I just did. And I backed my car in, and the police show up, and he's one of the officers is pretty aggressive. I thought, not aggressive, just intimidating. And he has a restraining order in hand. And I look, and there's a nanny grabbing my children. They disappear. My ex-husband disappeared, and I'm standing there in the driveway of my house, and the police are there. So he told me, the law is that I need to arrest you, but I'm not going to arrest you. I'm going to let you go if you leave peacefully right now. So I did. And I went to my hotel room, and I get a call an hour later from an officer, and he says, we've been talking to the victim, because all of a sudden he's a victim now. And we've been talking to the victim, and he's afraid of you, and we need to place you under arrest. So would you like us to come to your hotel room, or would you like to meet us out in the parking lot? And I was so naive that I bring a little overnight case with me. That's how naive I was. Of course in jail they don't let you have anything. I was extremely naive. And so they don't want to arrest me and call a supervisor out to the scene. It was an hour before they realized they had to arrest me. So they did. I didn't have the $750 needed to get out of jail. And this is from a very good income. My ex-husband is a civil engineer who owns a civil engineering company, and is does very well in that. So I should have had $750 on me, and nobody thought that was odd. So,
yeah, you were married to him for 24 years, and he's locked you out of the house.
$750, so that's.
He's locked you out of the house, and he's locked you out of the money, and that's what you get for raising his children.
Yes. So, anyway, I get out of jail, and I have my arraignment. It was on our would-be 24th anniversary, February 14th, and I go there. And as I'm standing in court, because I'm still not realizing what's happened, I look over at the district attorney's paperwork, and I see this big bright red domestic violence stamped on there. It's big enough for the judge to see, for everyone in that courtroom to see. And I was shocked. I could not believe that he was turning the tables this way. I thought there must be a mistake. He wouldn't do this. This isn't happening. And so I ended up at my hearing to accept the plea deal. And part of the plea deal was a 10-year restraining order. And whereas there was paperwork on all the other portions of the plea, there wasn't any paperwork on that. I didn't get the paperwork until I accepted it, and it wasn't signed until I accepted it. I mean, it was just funny how that works. Usually you read a contract, or, you read the information and then you sign it later, or you choose not to sign it. But I didn't even get to see the restraining order until the judgment was made. And so I look at the restraining order, and my kids are on there. And I thought it was just my ex-husband. And I was upset about that, but I still thought, there's no way they're going to take my kids away from me. I was a good mother. I was really a very good mother. I waited 10 years to have children. I read books to prepare, John Bradshaw's The Family, and all kinds of books I wanted the optimum family for my children. And that was important to me. I couldn't believe that they would take my children. And so from then on, it just completely changed. In family law, I lost every time. I was getting nothing. The judge ordered that I pay child support, even though I was just receiving no spousal support. It was as if, because I was labeled an abuser and he was labeled a victim. And once you get that label in family law court, getting out of it, it's going to be very difficult. I did everything I could. Part of the mandatory sentencing for violating a restraining order is 52 weeks of bad earth treatment program, which was $75 a week. Then I had the supervised visits, which were about $80 a week, plus the gas to get down to Roseville, 3 hours away. And money was going out, nothing was coming in, and the burden was huge. And I'm grieving and trying to make a life for my own from ground zero without, with nothing. I mean, I came into the marriage. I had a good income. I had a nice car. I had a nice apartment, and walked out with nothing, so, or was locked out with nothing. So it's been a very difficult 5-year process. That's, since then.
Well, sounds like a long 29 years, really. I mean, you've had 24 years of a marriage where you're monitored with cameras in your house, and watched wherever you're going and whatever you're doing. That sounds very controlling.
Yes, and he's very good at getting people on his side. It's amazing because basically in my marriage, I was the one who was liked in a social way, and he's kind of socially awkward. Yet when we separated, he managed to rally this support. And I mean, some people didn't cave into it, but it just amazed me. And then I would think to myself, well, he did that to me, and I lived with him. He just has this ability to get people to believe his story. So, and he did that with the district attorney, and that's why the plea deal was there. And in the interview with the district attorney, my ex-husband, of course, the victim gets what he wants, and he wanted a 10-year restraining order. So that's why she offered it in the plea deal. And, she asked him, did she abuse the kids? And first he says no. He says, oh, well, mental abuse. Well, it's called emotional abuse. It's not called mental abuse. Generally, when your child's being abused and you know it, you know the right term for it. You've read books and things, So anyway, the whole interview process, there was really nothing to show any abuse, and yet she still imposed that 10-year restraining order as part of my plea deal.
I mean, that's really outrageous. I mean, what would even constitute such a measure? You'd have to do something extremely serious.
And that's what everybody believes, from the judges to employers to landlords. Literally when the police, I've been pulled over twice for various traffic crimes in the last 5 years. They stay in their car, and until 4 or 5 officers show up, they see the 10-year criminal protective order and think, I've done something horrendous. And I always tell them my story. And usually officers know the restraining order game. They know it all too well, and they don't like it. And so they understand. But, it's just, it's funny. One time I answered my door because I was accused of, I guess something was done to his house. And he's always had enemies, not just me. I mean, I'm not his enemy. He's my kid's father. But somebody did something, and they called me to see where I was. And an officer came to the door, and I opened the door, and he instantly draws his gun, And so not only am I labeled a mother who lost custody of her children, So something must be terribly wrong with you because that's never happened. I've also got a 10-year criminal protective order. So with no
So
defense.
I was going to say, because do you have a record?
I didn't, I have a record now, but I didn't before I got
Right. So,
separated.
I mean, I would think that if this is such an outrageous custody decision by this judge, there must be a
Well,
way to reopen your case on grounds of discrimination, on grounds of, I mean, there's no evidence that
right.
you have a criminal record. So why would they take a 10-year criminal protection order so extreme? And
Yeah.
you're in California, yes?
Yes.
Because you were just
Hmm.
mentioning Roseville. I'm thinking, you know, what age are your children now?
Um, I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter, almost 10-year-old daughter.
And let me share some pictures with the audience so we get an impression of what you and your kids are like when you were still together. It's really sweet.
That's my middle one, Raina, and there's my two oldest, Romy and Raina. And there's Romy there. I loved being a mom, you know, it was my life.
You know, what's so outrageous about stories like yours and, well, most of ours, but I've also interviewed Mara Waston, and her story is very similar
Very
to
similar. I
yours.
was, and another thing about Mara that's incredibly, it's incredible how similar it is that I believed since my oldest one had turned 18 that the restraining order was not effective anymore. So I waited to think about what I was going to say to her, and I texted her about an experience that we had together when she was a child in kindergarten, and it turned out that it was a violation, and it was prosecuted. And even though I'd never contacted the kids before, and I agreed, of course, you know, that I wouldn't do it again for my kids' sake. I don't want them immersed in this in any way they don't have to. So it was prosecuted. It was due to go to trial, and we believed we were going to win. It was the restraining order says 3 minor children. She was now an adult, and that's pretty much what we were going on. So so I show up in court to set a trial date for that that is, you know, that matter, and I'm remanded at that time for posting a song of my middle daughter's from SoundCloud from a different profile of hers onto my Facebook to 12 family members. And I have 4,000 friends. It was a private post. But SoundCloud sends the link, and be careful of this. Not like Facebook. They're based in Germany, and they sent the entire link of my entire post from Facebook to my daughter, and my ex-husband received it. SoundCloud gave them the IP address, everything they needed without any warrants. So what happened from there is that I was remanded, and if it went to trial, I would have won. I'm certain of it. I've been to trial before for de minimis violations, and I've won. I knew I would win this one, but I didn't have that opportunity because I was remanded, and if I were to go to trial, I would be there for 4 months. And so I opted to plead, and I pled out, missed the opportunity to have a trial over the issue with my daughter, my 18-year-old daughter, and also the SoundCloud issue. So
I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean,
I'm on
this.
probation again, 3 years. This was 6 months ago. I'm on probation again. All these other things are imposed, these fines, and starting all over again. And it's very upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about? You're posting a private post on Facebook, and this becomes some kind of criminal charge.
Mhm.
This,
And it was out of pride, a mother's pride. It wasn't anything malicious. And you know, that instinct, that you know, that natural thing that makes the world a better place is being prosecuted. You know, so it's very disturbing to me.
let me share. Share my screen here and bring up the interview with Mara that I did, which is very similar. She had a restraining order, similar situation. I mean, almost exact the same situation.
And the six children, when I saw that picture, just one picture made me burst into tears. That's a crime. What happened, you know?
Yes, a long marriage, traditional marriage. She gave up her career to be there for the children, to raise the children, to dedicate her life to raising the children, which in my opinion is the most important job in the world. And then, you know, once her husband, you know, became too controlling about money, she basically, you know, the marriage fell apart, and he did the same thing on her. He got a restraining order against her. He got the kids, of course, full custody. She was put on visitation, and he got a restraining order against her. And then she waited until her son was 18 and texted him, "I love you." And that was caused her to get felony aggravated stalking charges filed against her. Yeah, and she was jailed.
Stalking your children. Who does that? You know, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and a similar situation here with protective mother Ruth. And, you know, really all our cases are the same. Davida Sanchez lost custody of her son to a man that's not even his father, you know. These are outrageous situations, and that's why we highlight it here on Hells for Children every week. You know, in your case, again, just like Mara's case, it seems like, you know, here you're dedicating your life to raising these children. Mm-hmm. That's your main goal. And then once the marriage falls apart and you're cut off the money, right? Because it's the same thing happens with Mara. She was cut off from the income, right? So you place the trust of your life.
Works because right. They've been doing it to you the whole marriage. They know it works. They know right. it.
You place the trust of your own life in the life of the hands of your husband, right? And he's got the control because he's got the money. And then you get a divorce, and here you don't have an attorney, and he's got an attorney. So you're going to court, and it's unequal already right there.
He had a very high-powered father rights attorney, Frank Doherty, through the entire process, a very well-renowned attorney. I mean, he would show up in court, and literally, I mean, the judge would be like, "Well, hello, Mr. Doherty." It was like they played golf together or something. He's just very odd, but you know, very respected attorney, very, very good actually too. So, you know.
Well, it's not odd. It's actually most of these attorneys know each other, even though they might represent opposing parties in a case. They actually go and have lunch together and drinks on Friday afternoon, and they discuss these cases, you know, in the bar, on the golf court, and decide the cases there as well, you know. And they share strategy. They set you up. So I wouldn't even recommend an attorney, especially not in California, unless you maybe have Sean McMillan, who's like one of the exceptions, and there's Patricia Berry. There's a few. Robin Yeamans is wonderful. There's like a handful of ethical attorneys in California, and the rest is all part of the good old boys club. And they will.
How could they conscientiously do that? He knew that this was going to take a mother from her children, and he has numerous psychology degrees. He knows who the abuser was. It's unconscionable to me. I could never do that for money. I just couldn't.
No, it's beyond me. I don't know how these people sleep at night. They obviously don't care about children whatsoever. They don't care about mothers. They just care about money, and they have no conscience. I think, in a sense, our exes, they might have this. I know very well that they have narcissistic and psychopath personality disorders, but the people that actually help them are worse. If you have a personality disorder, it's almost like, you're born like that. It might not have manifested all the way through up until things get ugly. But the people that actually support someone like that in the system, those are the real evil people, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. The level of education, the level of awareness, and the fact that they are outside of it. In a sense, they should be better behaved. They should make more conscientious decisions towards the right thing to do. But it just doesn't happen.
No, it's all about money, and they consider that their job. So they all agree that they just won't have any ethical concerns about that, and that's how they go through life somehow. I don't know, but I wanted to share this website here. Last week during the interview, I also shared this site, but a different part of it. This is part 2 in a series. A sanctuary for the abused, and it talks about many things that you mentioned in your story about discrediting and isolating the victim, playing the victim and or the hero, right? Mm-hmm. Lying, exaggerating, and manipulating. Manufacturing fear. For a grown man to call the police on his ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife to say, I'm in fear of my ex-wife. Come on, and then, label the victim inferior or sick, right? We're all labeled as mentally unstable, of course.
It's so easy to call a woman she's mentally unstable. And let's face it, when somebody's taking your children away, you're a little unstable.
I would say.
You're upset. So it's very easy to say that. And the people, the onlookers are going, well, that could be a possibility then, huh? So, it's first thing, you must be mentally ill if you're a woman, So.
Yeah, that's like saying take a cub from their lion mom, right?
Yeah, or chop one of the legs off and don't winch,
Right, don't winch.
Or you're mentally
do not cry.
Unstable.
Right. Do not show any emotion. If you show emotion, if you cry in the courtroom, your children will be taken from you because you're going to be considered mentally unstable. This is all nonsense. Now, let's talk about your kids. When's the last time you had any contact with them?
My oldest daughter, it's been 5 years. She was 14 the last time I saw her. My middle daughter, it's been 2.5 years. She was 10 years, or no, let's see, she was 12. She's now 15. And my youngest daughter, I had supervised visits until May when I got out of jail. I came home to an eviction notice. My car was repossessed. I had the payment in hand at the time of being remanded. And I'd lost 2 of my clients, and I owed money for damage that was done to an apartment for a dog that I was watching. Conscientiously, I felt that I should pay for that, and I did. I couldn't afford to see my daughter anymore. I couldn't afford to. And I just made a decision that maybe it's just time to let go until they return. So.
Well, it's important for them to hear your side of the story, because what happens in a lot of these cases is the children are put in full custody of the fathers, and they only hear one side of the story. And usually the story is, mom is crazy, mom is dangerous, stay away from mom, it's not good to be with mom. The judge said that you should live with me, and the judge knows everything, so listen to the judge knows best. And this is the brainwash that goes on. And I want to share this message for the stolen kids that I put on my website, freejasmine.com. Jasmine spelled with the Dutch spelling of her first name. And this is both under the help section as well, currently in the top of the recent posts. And it explains this to the children. Now, my first sentence here is, are you a kid and are you made to live with your abusive dad? You might not even consider him abusive. You might not even realize that he's abusive. Look, if you don't have any contact with your mom, or you have not been allowed any contact with your mom, you're a child and you're watching this, then the news for you is that is abuse. You are being abused. That is abuse.
Yes. And
right?
I wanted to mention too, like in Mara's case, similarities are amazing. I just still can't believe it. But in the case of Mara, you see all these photos. The father of the children's never in any of them. She's taking them kayaking by herself. She's taking them here and there on these adventures. That was me. He was never involved in their life. So these children are literally being ripped from their sole caregiver and handed over to someone they don't really even know. And they're feeling unsafe. They're feeling insecure. They're knowing kind of what's happening to the mother, that the mother all of a sudden doesn't have a home and she's struggling and upset. So they want to be safe. So a lot of times they'll align themselves with the one that's more stable. And so, that happens too, but it's so cruel to a child to have a mother who took care of them that's alive. What are we teaching our children?
When I went through this, my ex was really not in the picture in many of the first years of my daughter's life, and I would send him plane tickets. He would come and visit, and my daughter would sit in the back of the car in a car seat and say, "Who is that man, Mommy? Mm-hmm. Who's that man?" I said, "That man's your father."
Wow.
I mean, he had no connection to her, and here, a couple of years later, he's abducting her through the court, and everyone's saying that that's like somehow okay, but she had no connection. There was no connection there. There was no bond. There was no communication.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I tried, right? I offered him an apartment. I offered him to come live near us. I offered to pay his utility bills, and he didn't want that. But the court doesn't look at cases in depth like this. You can even...
They don't have the time.
Even if you had an attorney and you submitted this type of evidence, they wouldn't actually... I believe that these judges don't even look at the exhibits that you attach to your motions, because I recently filed a complaint against the attorney of my ex and showed all the false allegations that were made and attached them. That the state bar launched an investigation, thank God, because I don't even think the judge actually looked at the 452 pages of lies that had been submitted. I mean, what are we doing?
And it's, I tend to, I don't want to label judges and prosecutors and attorneys as all bad, because I don't believe they should really be scapegoats for what the real problem is. And the problem is laws or statutes or bills or any extension of law that deviates from our civil rights. And I believe that that is the problem.
Well, there's also another part of it, which is what the Stop Abuse campaign keeps pointing out, and that is that many judges are not trained to recognize coercive control of coercive controlling behavior or narcissistic personality disorders. There's other activists who say, well, look, the fathers' rights movement is getting federal funding. It's Title IV funding. So, it's intentional. There's many schools of thought on why these things are happening. Personally, I think it's a combination of all of these facts. Of course, it's about money. It's about control. It's about men who have, for thousands of years been the owners of women and children. I mean, we're not all that much different from many Islamic countries in that regard. It just looks different on the outside. But
instead of being stoned to death, we're being forced to live our lives without our children.
We're being deleted. You're allowed to.
We're erased.
You're erased. We're deleted. You can put the child. You can bear the child. You can give birth to it. You can breed it. You can feed it, and then it will get taken from you.
And what's taken from the children? I mean, it's me that knows every milestone and when they made it. I know my children. There's, it's really funny how that is. Even still, they're all three of them are unique individuals, and I'll read something or see something, and I know them. I know who they are as people, and nobody knows them like a mother. It's just the way it is. It's and I never realized that force, that power, the power of a mother until this. I knew it was strong, but moms are strong. They're going full circle. Judges don't know what to do with them. They're not, fathers were victimized by family courts for so many years. Instantly, the mother got custody, one claim of abuse, and they were done. But because of that, they wouldn't accept 5 years of supervised visits. They just moved on. And but mothers, we're not used to that. We're not used to people taking our kids away, and we're going full fruition with when the judge doesn't know what to do. So then the judge puts on vexatious litigant, which I've been declared a vexatious litigant, which is unbelievable to me. I hate going to court. This is not fun for me. This is not a game that I want to play,
So did you fight pro se then?
Yes, the whole time, except the short time during trial, which was a very not a very good experience with an attorney, because I didn't have a lot of money. I had very little, so an unqualified attorney went through trial with me. But there was no trial for child custody. There was no issue. The judge made it clear before trial that he had made his decision on child custody, and there would be nothing said about it. So, in every way, I've been denied due process. So.
Yeah, you could even file a civil rights suit.
That's where I'm going with this, because my case is so blatant. There really is no excuse for this. I mean, there's nothing on file, on record, no witness statements of me harassing or abusing anybody. And it's just his word. And even in the beginning, his word isn't that, because in the very, very beginning, he was still a little bit hopeful that I would come back. Unfortunately, instead of trying to get me back, he was trying to win a divorce at the same time, and it wasn't very, very attractive. And I didn't want to go back. But he was kind of hopeful that he would get me back, so he was a little more careful. But if you look at this history, it's gone from maybe mental abuse, all the way 4 years later. My oldest daughter filed a police report accusing me of sexually abusing her. And in the police report, my ex-husband the officer brings out that my ex-husband tried to file the report twice by himself. And the officer told him, your daughter's 18, she'd have to come down to the station. But it was thrown out because it was very vague. I remember that my mother, or I remember something that possibly happened. And the officer, the interviewing officer puts that in quotations. So, and it was basically at a pool party where I hadn't seen her all winter long, and she got, developed. And I go, oh my gosh, she got boobies. And I went like that, tap her breast, just a little tiny bit. It embarrassed her. And she told me, and I said, I'll never do that again. And I didn't. I respected her. But my family was very open that way. And it was nothing to it. There were probably 35 people there, So anyway, somehow that got twisted into I sexually abused my daughter. And it wasn't taken seriously. But at the same time, doesn't a judge and a mediator see the significance of going from a minor claim of abuse or something very, he's even hesitant to say, to sexual abuse?
You were on supervised visitation, so how can you be sexually abusing your own daughter?
Yeah. So I know that's the thing too. It's like the kids are falling apart, and it's my fault. It's like I'm not there. Everything's my fault. It's unbelievable, and that's what some people do is what they're doing. They blame you.
Yeah, that's
they're
a
the
typical
ones doing it, and you're the one blamed for it. It's unbelievable. It's just so twisted. It's backwards. Everything's backwards, upside down.
Yes, the narcissist will project everything that he is doing onto his victim. And it's very hard for children to make sense of that. So, if you're at the point that your kids are brainwashed by this stuff, I highly recommend they go take a look at my message for stolen kids. And this is part of that message. I just scrolled down on that page. Why is your dad doing this? Many fathers are upset that the relationship or marriage with your mom failed. And, this is a way to take revenge. As you just shared so well, Marlena, that you had to start paying him child support. Mm-hmm. This is another very important reason why mothers lose custody, right? And then the fathers will tell everybody that mom is crazy and mom is dangerous. Some even make fake websites and social media accounts. And I get approached when I have mothers come on the show. Mm-hmm. I actually have people approach me pretending to be family members or pretending to be friends and slandering the mother before she'll come on the show. So I've seen everything. I've seen every end of this. So the reason why fathers do that, if you're a child and you're watching this and you're in this situation, they want your mom to be isolated, and they want your mom to be lonely. They want your mom to be poor. It is a form of revenge. And interestingly enough, if you are a child and you're in a situation and you end up leaving and finding your own way in life, you'll probably find out that your father won't want much to do with you anymore, specifically not when you start seeking contact with mom, because then their little game has failed. These guys are usually control freaks, just like you were watched, Marlena. This is what fathers also do to their children when they have
custody. My children are living the nightmare I lived, yes. And that's one thing. I didn't get hurt when that police report was filed. It didn't devastate me. And the reason why is because I was manipulated as an adult for 24 years. What could I expect from a child or an 18-year-old young lady? I have no expectations from them. Whatever they do is erased immediately in my mind, because if I, as an adult, succumb to that kind of manipulation, then of course the child is. So I don't take it personally from them. I know that it is just the environment they're in.
Right, but it is one of the goals of this show is for the children to start thinking for themselves.
Right. Hopefully, yes.
This type of mind control through lies and false allegations needs to stop. I mean, in the end, what these fathers are doing, I see it as soul harvesting. This is what we're in. We're dealing with narcissists, psychopaths, and they're soul harvesting. They're trying to get
Yes.
children to hate and reject their own mothers, which is the most unnatural thing you can ever do to a child.
It is. It's twisted.
It's completely twisted, and there's even fathers who will get the aid of brainwash therapists and camps and deprogramming. Oh my goodness. So for me, it is important that the children start to become aware that they are actually victims of this. So we need to somehow reach them and explain to them, like, okay, this is why your father has done that, and there's an entire campaign of money that rewards him for doing this. A lot of people make money off of this. It's federally funded, this campaign against mothers, and the children need to wake up because they have been robbed of a relationship with their own mother, which is a gross form of child abuse. And there was an article in the Psychology Today a couple of weeks ago about the fact that this type of maternal deprivation or parental alienation, whatever you want to call it, is so severe in the terms of the way it impacts children that it's on par with physical and sexual abuse.
Yes. It's severe. I know that it's, and I have, I can't give details, but, my children have reached out to me in certain ways, and they're hurting. They're hurting really bad, and they want their mom. And there's nothing I can do about it. I know that I've tried to convey to them that I'm helpless in the way that I can't be there, and I think they understand. So, it's just have to wait until 2022, and boy, I'm going to have a hit parade when that restraining order is up. I'm ready with open arms, and all's forgiven, and the past is the past, and there's no judgment on any behavior from a child during trauma like this, and there might be anger. I'm ready for that, and just have to look forward to that time.
Well, what's important is that we don't only wake up our own children to the brainwashing that they're exposed to, but we need to wake up society to the fact that this is happening. This is federally funded. I started a database on my website with cases that I found online. These are all clickable links and will take you to petitions, YouTube videos, websites of moms. And this is all, this is listed by alphabetical order. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's an estimated 85,000 mothers a year that this is happening to.
Oh my! Oh.
And that's a very conservative number.
Impacts society.
Yes.
So negatively, it's just.
It's a very conservative number. The estimate right now in the United States is that there are about 2 million protective mothers. And that's just the United States. This Father's Rights anti-mother campaign has reached pandemic proportions, and there's about 8 million of us worldwide, is my estimate. From the research that I've done. Now, if you click on these links and you actually read or listen to the stories, all our stories are the same. They're all the same. Is
Well,
this like a script?
once that pendulum, it usually involves some form of, like you wanted to protect your child by taking her away from him. So it involves some type of action on our part, whether it be uh, accusations of abuse or violence or kidnapping or uh, any kind of legal term. And then once that pendulum swings that way, getting it back down is impossible. It's just impossible.
No,
It
it's not
really,
impossible. We're going after them. This
now
is why.
it's happening. Now we live in a pivotal time in history, and I believe that it's happening. It's amazing. I took a year off. I wasn't on Facebook, and I was thoroughly involved before then. I get online, I get on Facebook, and those groups that were once just a bunch of support and people talking now have actual foundations for change,
Yes.
support.
And it's moms like you and me who have the courage to come forward and start talking about their cases and start advocating for what's happening. And one of these moms is Marilee McLean. She's also been on the show. This is a wonderful interview that she did about how the court game is stacked against us. And this is what we need. We need the moms to become vocal. We need the moms to come out and speak publicly on shows like this, on radio shows, in front of law students, in front of policymakers, and explain how the court is robbing children from their mothers at pandemic rates, and how this father's rights agenda has been completely, it's a completely out of control game. In the case of the pedophiles, of course, the pedophiles will always use the so-called parental alienation syndrome against us to claim that we are falsely alleging abuse, where it's, usually the children who are actually reporting the abuse, not even the mothers. Parental alienation has turned out to be a complete bogus term invented by Richard Gardner, who was a pedophile himself and who was promoting sex between fathers and children. One of his quotes was, "Incest is benign, the children even love it," right? And if the father abuses his child, it's because his wife is not responsive to his sexual needs. This man ended up killing himself by stabbing himself 7 times. So I'm glad he's dead.
I'm sorry, I hate to laugh. It's terrible, but someone who makes statements like that is pretty scary. So.
Well, this is the policy of Richard Gardner, is what's been leading family courts, and this is what you're caught up in as well. Your ex might not be a pedophile, but the judges and attorneys, when they're in law school, they're taught that mothers lie, and the opposite actually is true. Dr. Saunders of the Department of Justice did research into this, and in 2012 produced a report where he evidenced that fathers are 16 times more likely to lie than mothers, and that mothers only lie in a very, very few cases, and in those cases the children can be detected if there's any type of coaching. Any good child psychiatrist can detect that very easily. So the fact that parental alienation, this hoax is used, that needs to stop. There's definitely an intentional agenda behind it, because they know that when they take your children from you, you're going to be upset, just like you explained, and you're going to fight, and you're going to spend all your last money and all your resources and all your family's resources on attorneys, on going through evaluations to prove that you're okay, and parental class,
You're dissected. You're literally dissected right there, exposed.
It's a game. It's a game.
If you have a flaw, it's going to come out. And so far, my flaws are not really that bad. You know, if you look at it, I mean,
It's
we all
just a
have flaws.
game. They put you in the treadmill of the machine, you know.
They do.
Okay, supervised visitation. All right, now we're going to get about $100 a week on that, and we're doing throw a bunch of parenting classes in there. That's a couple of grand, and here's a custody evaluation, some psych eval, which is usually doesn't even test for domestic violence, so the outcomes are usually totally out of control and not appropriate for custody cases. So that's another $3,000. You're probably going to spend, on average, protective mothers spend $100,000 on an attorney for their case. That's an average. I also know mothers who spent $4 million on their cases and still didn't get anywhere. So it's not only about money, but the fact is that everybody's making money of it. That's for sure. Control and money go hand in hand. Now, I think it's very interesting that you started fighting pro se in your case. Can you share with the audience how you gained the knowledge to do that?
Well, I wasn't good at it at first. I looked at my first motions filed, and in the beginning, and then 5 years later, and there's a huge evolution of progress going on. So I wasn't good at it at first, but I would highly recommend taking advantage of any help you can get. Most courthouses do have a self-help where there's attorneys there. They won't give you any legal advice as far as which way to go, but they'll basically, it's what do you want to accomplish? Here's the form, and here's how to fill it out, and here's how you file it. So that's basically what they help you with. Once you learn that, you're pretty much on your own unless you have an attorney. And I made a lot of mistakes. There would be times when I would, because you have to kind of predict where they're going to go with this. And if you don't have the experience, you don't really know. So I would file motions on something completely different than where they were going. But it basically always ended up about the restraining order. Every single mediator opened up their report on there is a 10-year criminal protective order, first words. The psychological evaluation, first words of my report are there is a 10-year criminal protective order. So basically reminding them my hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. Nobody can do anything. A family law judge he'd have to be so courageous and base his ruling on 10 Supreme Court decisions in order to award someone with a criminal protective order unsupervised visits. It's extremely unusual, not going to happen. If I would have known what I know now, I would have taken my energies and my money out of family law court and gone into criminal court and got that restraining order removed. And you need to do that right away, because the tactic is that they will try to file, or they'll try to get you prosecuted for all these de minimis violations, which is so easy to do. I was prosecuted for my 14-year-old daughter was invited to connect with me on LinkedIn, which is an automated message that went to all my contacts, and every single automated message was one count against me. So when
ridiculous.
When those things happen, the family law judge looks at it. He doesn't look at the circumstances of the prosecution. He doesn't look at for that. He doesn't do that. But he looks at the fact that you must not have restraint because you violated this restraining order. So that's how they look at it. They don't look at it like this animal over here is really going overboard by what he's bringing the district attorney. And
an automated message from LinkedIn is used by a bully in court, and a judge signs for it.
I signed up for LinkedIn, and evidently it contacted all of my contacts, and one of my contacts was my daughter. It only contacted the ones on LinkedIn. Well, I didn't really expect my 14-year-old to be on LinkedIn, which suspiciously, she's on every single website possibly. It's like he's baiting, but um, so that it's just ridiculous how it gets. And that restraining order is so effective. It's if you're going to give the right tools to that kind of personality, take them to family law court and they get a restraining order. It's a playground for them. Every tool they need to destroy and continue to victimize the person they've victimized for years is there. I'm more controlled now. I'm more isolated now. Through this restraining order, there are so many addendums attached to it. He goes to court. He basically says, I'm afraid of her, and I don't want her talking to these people, and they're added to the restraining order. I have been, there's an addendum on the restraining order that says that I can't go to my church that he doesn't go to, or speak to the elders. It's so ridiculous. It's isolated me from 24 years of my life where I was nothing but a law-abiding, generous, kind, giving, hardworking mother. And that past is gone. It doesn't exist because any form of it I have been banned from in one way or the other.
Yes, your ex is a terrorist. He is a domestic terrorist. And, Coral Annika Teal, she writes about men like this. She's a victim as well. And in this article, Men Who Batter Women Are Terrorists, she describes exactly what's happening to you. This, constant attempt to destroy your life. It's a seek and destroy mission. And you don't have to hit your wife to be a domestic terrorist. This baiting, this online baiting through LinkedIn, any type of controlling behavior, cameras, social media controlling, email hacking, these are all forms of domestic terrorism. And as far as I'm concerned, domestic terrorism should be a criminal act. The evidence that we have on domestic terrorism is huge. I mean, you could probably put together 3 cardboard boxes full of evidence on the stalking and harassment of your ex. I can do too. I have so much.
It's unbelievable. Here I am, the one being harassed, and I'm being accused of it. I'm the one. It's so unbelievable to me. And, I do get the sense when I'm in criminal court now that it's so obvious, but the judges are bound by law. I've had several judges recuse themselves from even hearing my case. So, it's just the laws need to change. There should be due process. And a family law issued restraining order. What used to happen years ago is it was issued in family law court, and if you violated it in family law court, it stayed in family law court, and the judge would say something like, well, you have no restraint, so you're going on supervised visits. Well, since the Violence Against Women's Act in 1994, the reform, it propels you right into criminal court, and you're criminally prosecuted. It was an attempt to protect the abused, but it's turned to where the abuser can use it very effectively, which is unfortunate. But and in my case,
explain that in depth to the audience, because I know what you're saying, but many people who are watching the show are unfamiliar with the act. Or in other countries. This show is watched in 144 countries. So explain how this is working.
The Violence Against Women's Act reform in 1994, I remember it as a child. It was big because so many people fought against it, namely civil rights activists, the ACLU. They were concerned that it denied a person's civil rights. So that is the reason I was arrested, because mandatory arrest is one of the things that are included in that reform. And criminal prosecution for violation of restraining order is another thing that's included. And trying not to abuse the victim. The judges don't have to go by the 50-50 property laws when there's an abuser and a victim. The victim gets more, a lot more. I'm at about 15% of spousal support guideline. So, which goes to child support. So, so because of that act, it kind of, a lot of feminist movements at that time, they knew that more fathers were going to get custody. They knew that it was happening. So in an attempt to protect the victim, all these other mandatory statutes and additions were added to that original act. So, you know, a lot of people, and then because of funding, because the Violence Against Women's Act funds so many different things. It funds every time there's an abused person and an abuser, if they go to the hospital, part of the funding to that treatment comes from the Violence Against Women's Act. If the police are called, law enforcement is funded by that act. The judges, the attorneys, there's so many things that are funded by the act that in order to keep that funding coming, because it's such a large sum of money, they need to have the same amount of victims and the same amount of abusers all the time, even though in civil and criminal court, that's improving. So where are they taking them? They're taking them from family law court. And since they can't take as many fathers because of the fathers' rights movements, they're having to take mothers. So that is part of it. And I'm certain of that. And it's part of the huge turnaround that's happening because it's so sudden, you know, and it is since the 1990s and all that was happening at once. The fathers' rights educational campaign that was huge. It educated law enforcement, hospitals, judges that women lie. And if they're claiming abuse, it might not be true. And I don't think that their motive was evil to destroy mothers and women. I think that they were trying to get on a course of fairness and equality, and it wasn't fair then, just like it isn't now. The abuser should lose their children, not a fit parent, whether a mother or father. A fit parent should have access to their children. So, you know, family law didn't change. Family law was never reformed. All they did is just take more mothers and less fathers. And they're still victims of family law, which is...
It's a pro-abuse industry. And here's, you know, like you said it very well, without victims, there's no funding, right? So we need victims. And so, you know, if the system supports abusers, then there's going to be lots of victims and there's lots of funding for that. This is a great website by Doreen Ludwig, who did a lot of research into the funding, father's rights funding. These are all PDFs that you can download, and you can see the billions of dollars that goes into these programs. Fatherhood.gov. I mean, come on, people. There's no motherhood.gov.
Mothers have no help. There's no help out there. We're caught in the middle. We're being victimized like these fathers have been and still are, just like mothers. But we're caught in the middle. The fathers' rights movements don't want us. It's just really a mess, you know, for mothers out there. There's really no help. I mean,
we need audit into this money. You know, we need an audit into this. Where is this money going? Mm-hmm. What is it used for? Is it used in a legitimate way? I would say this is discriminatory. I mean, why do fathers get funding and mothers don't get funding? That's discriminatory. So that should just stop right there.
You're right. It should be parents. It should be parents.
We should be going after abusers and not be funding abusers.
Yes.
I mean, one of the worst stories that I had on my show, and the show is still a radio show, was Jen Goodwin. Her ex-husband had beaten a man to death with his bare hands. He came out of jail and he got full custody of her child
Oh my
because
God.
there was fatherhood's funding of men who had been in prison. I mean, give me a
Yes.
break.
Yes.
Just
And
out of control.
many fathers with criminal protective orders as part of their parole um, for being in prison for beating their wife to death or half dead, get out, and this funding helps them to get that order removed, and it's like it never happened, so
Absolutely. Yeah, this page here, reflection, explains the nuts and bolts of the pro-abuse industry and how this federal funding of these pro-abuse federal funding is funneled through these organizations in the United States, like the AFCC, the AHS, CRC, CPR, the OCSE, the TANF, PSI, and CPPS. And again, you can go into here and see the evidence of that, how that money is all slushed through these channels into these organizations. So when you go to like a women's shelter, it's actually funded by all of this this tax money that you're paying, right? So it works like a corporation that profits from its victims, and it's paid for by your tax dollars. This needs to change, obviously. 82% of all abusive fathers get full custody. Wow.
Well, the reason is because very few fathers file for full custody, which should be questioned right from the beginning, because it's usually a problem when they do. There's something wrong. There's some control going on, that it's unnatural for a father to want to do that unless the mother's a serial killer. They just don't usually file for full custody. Very few of them do. And in the cases where they do, 70% get custody. So.
Yes, and you're bringing up a great point, and I'll share my screen here because I do some artwork around all of this. I'm an artist in origin, so this stuff bothers me so much. I try to have some creative
Very
outlet.
intense, yes.
What kind of father wouldn't want their child to have a mother? Is something
Yes, you're right.
seriously wrong with you?
Yes, there's something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you if you're trying to get in between a mother and a child. I remember my daughter being 8 years old, and she would ask me, she'd come up to me and say, "Mom, why does my father want me to take me away from you?" She said, "That's not natural, because when I look at all these National Geographic movies, it's all about nature. It's like the children are with mom in the entire animal kingdom."
I know, and I'll never forget the most painful memory of me of all of this was when my ex-husband allowed me to come to the house to see my children before supervised visits were imposed. And my then 4-year-old ran up to me and clung to me. And she looked at her dad. And she looked at him and grabbed onto me. She looked at him and she said, "She's mine." And she nuzzled her little shoulder, or her little face into my shoulder. Little did I know then that she knew what was going on. I didn't know I wasn't there. And I didn't want to believe it, but she knew what Dad was doing.
Our kids knew that they were up to this, because my daughter was the same thing. She was 9 years old one time. She woke up in the middle of the night with a nightmare, and she said, "Not even when I'm 25 is my father going to give up. I'm only going to be free when he's dead." I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like it's a 9-year-old
And
child.
listen to them. Listen to these kids that, you know, they don't say things like that and behave that way unless they're hurting, unless it's happening. Kids want to embrace love. They want to believe the world's a wonderful, peaceful, loving place, and both mom and dad are perfect. So when they're saying something's not, listen to them, you know, but they want, society wants to believe that it's just okay, and it's not.
And, you know, the beauty about truth is that I know this has happened, and so do you. And all of this is going to come out in a totally different type of court of justice as far as I'm concerned, because this is just one dimension of reality, but there will be others. Whether you are religious or not, there are consequences to your actions. This type of fathering, my child does not need a mother. I teach my child what control is. This is an agenda that is not just happening within family courts. This is happening all over the planet. This is what we are all dealing with in every level of society. We are dealing with control freaks who want us to be in a level of submission, whether it's in employment or in family situations or in political situations. This is what we are up against. It is spiritual warfare, and our freedom is at stake. And I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not going to stand for any of this control agenda, no matter who is doing it or what is doing it. I will stand up for anyone who stands for freedom. Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to collectively try and achieve, is a change of mentality, and where we say, look, you know, this is not about men against women. This is not necessarily about patriarchy either, because guess what? Many of the people inflicting these human rights violations are women. They're often female attorneys, female guardian ad litems, female psychologists, female supervisors, female judges. Mm-hmm. So to just say this is patriarchy, no, it's a control agenda. Yeah. And money is a way to exert that control. It's definitely a part of it. Mm-hmm. But it's larger than that. It's spiritual warfare.
And the trouble with going through years of this is that we've gone through years of being judged, dissected. We are financially depleted. We're suffering the most horrendous grief that a mother can experience, is to lose her children in life and to be banned from them. It's so confusing and awful. And we start to come out of it, and we have nothing. We have no energy. We're just exhausted. But we have to have some energy. You have to save some. You have to find it from somewhere. And if you have to take 6 months off or a year to just get away from it, but go back and start fighting, you know, because that's the only way. That's the only way family law is going to change. It depends on that exhaustion. It depends on that financial depletion of a person. And you have to rise above it. If not for anything else, but for the fact that our children are watching us, and they know, and they will know somehow. And we got to have a good track record. We fought for what's right because we want our children to believe and fight for what's right. You know?
Well, one of the things that you're setting a great example for the other protective mothers is by fighting pro se. I have a lot of respect for that. I know that when your children are at an age where they can actually request the records, they can see all your motions. and they can see that you really, really tried and that you really, really fought for them, and that, okay, you're not an attorney, but you went out of your way to learn family law and to fight for them.
Mhm.
And I know that, I'm fighting pro se too. And to me, it's like, this is not about winning.
Mhm.
My daughter is going to look at those records and she's going to see lies next to truth.
And
And
it's so
you know
simple.
what?
For time with my children, and he says no. It's so simple. It's
Right.
so
She's been there. My daughter's been there. So
yeah.
yeah. So all she has to do is read it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about soul harvesting and when I'm talking about spiritual warfare.
Right.
When my daughter reads that, I know she knows what's up. And I'm not going to make her choose. I would never make her choose. She only has one father,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always respected him.
Me too. To this day, I have a hard time saying anything about him because he's the only parent they have right now. And I don't want life to be any worse than it is. And tearing him down is not.
No, that's not what this is about. I've always tried to facilitate the father-daughter relationship. It's just not the other way around. But that's not, not for me to judge. There'll be, another source that will judge all of that. And for me personally, some people say it's God. I personally believe your own conscience will, you will be presented with your own actions, when you get to the life after this life, you will be presented with everything you've done and all the thoughts, feelings, and results of your actions and how they have been felt by others. Yes. I'm actually also an expert in near-death experiences, and I write on this topic, and I have been doing so for about 10 years. And I've studied this topic for a long, long time. And this is what almost every near-death experiencer describes upon return, is that you see what you have done to another person, but you also become the other person and actually experience being on the other end of it. So this is very interesting to think about, because that would mean that your ex at some point will experience what it was like to be you and what it was like to be his own children. So this is how you will see a rewind of your own movie, so to speak, your life review. And other religions that will, the Buddhists will say, like, okay, you'll face your own demons. Or, Christianity, you'll, have to face Jesus or God, and, there will be some other type of judgment. I don't necessarily believe in judgment, but I do believe that you will see what the impact has been of your life
and
on the life of others.
Anything, and if not anything, time all by itself is going to reveal the truth,
Yeah, in the end, when our children become parents themselves, they will have to make choices on what type of parent they will become. And it is up to them to then make their own choices.
Yeah. And, I was going to say something about the efforts, too, is that I used to look at having to go back into those boxes, emotions and history. I dreaded it. I just I don't want to go in here to file this motion. Oh my God, I have to go in box number 1 when that happened, and I have it fairly organized. But I don't look at it that way anymore. I call it boxes of love. Every piece of paper in there is love. And I'm proud of it. It's it's a good track record of a lot of effort. So, do
you have any tips for protective mothers as to how to deal with the ongoing post-traumatic stress syndromes and being able to fight pro se this ongoing years after years after years of doing this? How do you do that?
Well, for 4.5 years, I felt as though I called it purgatory, because I had left my old life that I couldn't live anymore. but I was unable to merge onto any kind of a new life of happiness and the woman that I wanted to be. So I was stuck as a fighting mother who didn't have my kids. And it's difficult to do, and it requires a lot of, number one, not feeling guilty for experiencing pleasure or happiness. For me, that was huge. I had to fight. I had to be sad and miserable because my kids are, and it's wrong to be happy. So I think trying to realize what you do have in this new life that you want to merge into. What did you want to be then that you couldn't be? Who did you want to be friends with that he wouldn't allow you to be, or family members that he wouldn't let you see? Education that you wanted to get, or a career that you wanted to pursue, or all the things that you left him for. Start doing them and try to find a balance between fighting and not giving up, but also merging onto that new woman. Because when our kids come back to us and they're adults, we want a mom they can be proud of. And if we're unhappy and we're bitter and we're jaded and we're angry and not forgiving, that burdens them, for number one. They don't need any more burden. They've suffered it long enough. But it creates a happy environment for them to come back to. And you can experience it. You can be present because you're whole, and you've allowed yourself to be given to, and you've allowed yourself to give to you. And that's something mothers have a difficult time with, but yet we don't have our children, so all that giving goes into fighting for them. It's just hard to get out of there. And I've so been there. And my mother said something to me, and that really was pivotal. And it was, she said, Marlena, what have you realized or done that you couldn't do when you were married that you wanted to? Have you done anything? And I said, no, I haven't. And it was a 3-hour drive home, and I cried all the way home. And I just told myself, I'm going to start shining again. I looked at pictures of me with my kids with smiles on my face, and I wanted to be her again, and the new woman that I always wanted to be. And so, that's, you have to allow yourself that. And for the first time ever, I've experienced some happiness. I've allowed myself to be happy. I'm pursuing things I wanted to do. And there is a certain part of not having kids, the busy life of children, that you're able to do that. Take advantage of it, because it's what you have. Sure, you want to be a mom. You want to have your kids, of course. That's, you take in a heartbeat in the middle of all of you're pursuing, you would take your kids, but you can't right now. You can't have them right now. There are things that you can have, though. And that's just my focus right now, is the balance between fighting, staying strong, and becoming the woman that they can be proud of. So that's where I'm at.
Well put, and I totally agree with you. And when our children come back, it's so important we're not wrecks on the couch, completely traumatized.
And it's so easy if we just don't allow ourselves to live, And
right. So taking care of yourself is so important. And I had Patrice Lenowitz on, who is protective mother, who started a national but local type of group support called the Nurtured Parent, for all the guests who feel the need to have this type of support. These are local groups, Nurtured Parent, and basically you meet with other protective mothers and you share what your week was like. And I think that is really important, to do that on a regular basis, so you can share hardship, but also share solutions and share survival tips. What might be working for you one year might not be working the next year. You have to constantly adjust as to the healing methods that you apply supplements that you might want to take to support your system, to stay healthy, to stay strong, to fight depression, whatever you need to do. I try all types of stuff, and it's kind of interesting
It's
too.
not easy. It's a
No,
fight. If all you do is plant a pot of flowers in a little tiny pot in your kitchen window that day, do something. Do something for yourself. Something outside a family law court. Just try. And it's so hard. But once you do, you look at that little pot of flowers and goes, that's so pretty. And I did that. I did that. So, and it kind of helps you get out of that a little bit, because we need to step back. And also, it improves our efforts, because when you step back from that picture and you see the big picture, the fog is cleared, and you see more. So it.
right. I mean, we
all
don't
around good.
want we don't want our own souls to be harvested either in this
Right.
evil
You
battle.
don't want
I
to go
mean,
down with,
yeah.
family law, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that there was an activist who committed suicide this week. It happens on a
So
regular
many.
basis. Yeah, and we want to prevent that. I had a protective mother friend who once said to me, if you just breathe through the day, then that's the victory right there. Because the ultimate goal is for you to kill yourself. So if
Yeah.
you can just stay standing in the middle of it, and if you can even just
Wake up the next day. That's all you got to do. Just wait. You'll
wake up
feel
the next
better.
day.
Wake
Yep.
up the next day. You'll feel
Yep.
better. Just do that. That's all you have to do.
That's
So
right.
it's hard, but it's hard. I've been there. It's hard.
And I
So,
think, keeping your sense of humor, I think that's been one of my main survival talents, is to be able to see the bizarreness and the absurdity of all of it, and to be able to see that it's just a matter of time. These children do not remain children. It is a power trip that these guys are on, and okay, they are getting supported. We're not going to let them get away with it. We're going after the people who are doing this to us. But keep in mind that you're not going to stay in this situation
right.
forever. I think that's
And
very important.
childhood is the shortest part of our lives. We may not be able to help raise our children, and that's sad and it hurts. But look what we have. We have an adult child who is going to get married. They're going to have babies. We're going to have grandchildren. And we need to be ready for that too. We need to be there. And
Right. And at that point, we don't want to be bitter because of the experience. And that's really important. It's
so important.
There are all kinds of emotions as you're going through this excruciating grief. And I think it's important to acknowledge all of them. It's normal to be angry. It's normal to be sad. It's normal to be frustrated. It's normal to be afraid. All of these emotions are part of the experience. I think the most important thing when I look at it is to try not to stay stuck in any of these emotions, to try to work through them.
And there's a very good grief chart. It's just an excellent chart. I'll send it to you, but it talks about the stages of grief. And every one of us are different, and we stay at different stages longer. But then it's kind of a U shape, because you do hit that bottom, for a while. You're just like, oh my God. And then getting back up is very difficult. It takes a lot of effort and emotional strength. But once you start getting up and climbing back, you're not quite the same person as you started out, but you're okay. You're okay. And you're stronger, and you found happiness in something else, so.
Yeah, for me, what works is to channel the energy, the frustration and the anger and the grief into, producing a show like this,
Right.
or to fight pro se and help other mothers with some tips, maybe some strategy, the stuff like that, or maybe help other mothers find support with each other. I think what's really important, and this has kind of come up over the last couple months, is to be united as protective mothers, not to infight, not to be so focused on, why is it happening? And if you're not completely in agreement with why I think it's happening, then you're not my friend. And it's like, come on, please, let's get over this petty stuff. The causes for judicial child trafficking are complex. There is paternal fascism, but there's also corruption. There's also money interest. There's also ignorance. There's also pedophilia. There's also sociopathy. There are so many. It's a complex issue.
And that's why it's not fixed, because it's so complex. The bottom line, if your kids were taken from you through CPS, if they were taken from you from an abusive ex-husband, it started in family law court and it ended in family law court. For all of us, that's what we have in common. And so that needs to be fixed. And just agree on that, so.
Well, yeah, I think most of this family court stuff should simply be abolished, personally. I think what's been done to you is criminal. And what's been done to me and, the majority of protective mothers is criminal.
Yes.
To have the mother-child bond severed like this, or the attempts to sever it, is a criminal act. It needs to be handled in criminal court. Domestic terrorism, where's my homeland security?
Right.
I don't need to get protected from an Islamic terrorist, which is a chance of 1 in 10 million to get into some terrorist attack when I have my own terrorist attack happening right in my family place.
Yes, I know, a terrorist attack every day a bomb drops. It's never ending. And it's funny how I just laugh sometimes, because it's, an officer will call me in the middle of the night and tell me to be quiet. And I guess what they're doing is pinging my phone to see where I'm at, my location. I guess, I don't know, something happened. He thought I drove by or something. I don't know. But I've never gotten in trouble, but it's like, it's such a violation of my rights, my sleep. It's just to be told to be quiet and have to stay on the phone for 5 minutes. But I just, I've learned to live with it. It's funny how you do that.
We were under surveillance.
So
we're under surveillance, and it's ridiculous. I had a little protective mother by the name of Melissa Barnett on, and like you, she's dealing with this restraining order. Mm-hmm. And she had yellow roses delivered to her daughter for her 15th birthday. And she was charged with aggravated stalking. Uh-huh. And her daughter, one day she was on the bus, and her daughter came on the bus and saw her and got off the bus right away. It's like, oh my God, it's mom. I'm not allowed to have any contact with mom. I don't want to bring my mom in, get my mom into trouble. Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do is just get off the bus. And I mean, come on. Is this really the kind of world?
Yeah, it's so sad. I had that experience where I saw my oldest daughter in a Starbucks, and this was a pivotal moment for me also when I just decided to embrace some happiness. I stood behind her and I heard her little voice, and she went from 14 to 19 years old. The change is phenomenal, and I recognized it right away. And I knew that I couldn't talk to her because of the restraining order. I just kind of froze. And she was such a little lady, so polite. And she went over to wait for her coffee, and then they called my name, and she heard. She perked up and she looked at me, and she just looked surprised, and she went out into her car and drove off, and she was 14 the last time I saw her. And there was some hurt there, but I felt proud. I felt this is my daughter. She's so beautiful and graceful. And it told me that I'm forever her mother. because that feeling of pride was only something a mother's going to feel for her child or a parent, you know? So that's not gone. But it also told me that I have some responsibility in this human being, you know, the goodness of this human being. And it was a good feeling. And it allowed me to somehow step away a little bit, that I'm not a mother if I'm not fighting every second of every day, because it's a bond. It's an energy that's there. And nothing I do is going to make it go away or stay better. It's there. So that's okay. That's secure. I'm their mom. That's established. You know, establish that with yourself, that you are their mother. And people would tell me that, and I didn't get it until that day. I am her mother. I'm my children's mother. Nobody's going to take that away, no matter what. You know, so you want to fight for change, but don't worry. You're still their mother. It's not going to go away if you step back and enjoy life a little bit. You're still their mom, you know.
No, and I think the enjoying of life is the most important thing to be able to do. That's why we need to, you know, help each other with tips and advice on how to do that. Since most of us are depressed and sad and angry and frustrated and are dealing with the negative emotions, which is exactly what these fathers want. Right. They are so miserable because we've left them that now they want us to be miserable. It's like a kindergarten game.
Fragile. They're very fragile. They can't handle it. And I knew he wouldn't be able to handle it, so I tried to do it so delicately, but I ended up being stomped on because of it. So
I think the most important thing to do for yourself in all of this is to be successful, no matter what. And if that means breathing through the day, then that's it. If you can pull off, like you said, following your passions and going back to school and finally getting the degree you never had a chance to get because you put your whole life at, you know, in the sacrifice for your children and your husband, and now you don't have to do that anymore. So take that time. I do all kinds of things I couldn't do for the 10 years that I was a single mom full time. You know, I go out, I go dancing, I travel. So I pluck the, you know, the fruits of freedom while I still have it, because I know one day my daughter's going to be home and life is going to change again, you know. So
and she's going to look at you and go, wow, my mom went through all that, and look at her. Look at her go, you know, and that's what we want them to see as young women. That's what we want to be for them, you know.
And I agree with you on all the boxes of court papers. I see it the same way. Yes, we are battling the paper tiger, but that is also our parenting at the moment.
It's the only parenting we can do.
That's right.
And that's one reason we embrace it sometimes at the expense of sacrificing ourselves a little bit, you know, because it's the only parenting we can do, and we want to parent our children. That's what we want to do. So it's natural that we do that. There's nothing wrong with it, you know.
And for the children who don't know that we're doing this, you know, they'll find out when they do seek us out in the future. And then we can show them all this work that we've done for them, and they'll understand. They'll be able to read it. I actually had a victim, a child survivor, contact me, and she said, you know, I ran away from my father when I was like 13 or 14, and I took the Greyhound bus to my mother, and I read the entire court file from beginning to end. And she said, once I read that, I knew exactly the false allegations and the lies, all the stuff my father had said about my mother that wasn't true. And that, well, she at that point chose not to have any more contact with her father. I respect that. That's her decision. But I was happy to see that she rebonded with her mother because she realized what her mother had gone through. So I just want to put that out there because healing is possible, and so important to hang in there for that moment. That moment can come. And for the brainwashed children, they usually start waking up by the time that they become parents themselves.
Yes.
That's when they start looking back.
So what if somebody took this precious little baby from me? It's wow. It's yeah. And about that bond with your children, I was isolated so much that I didn't see my mother for 10 years because my ex never wanted me to be around family. It was such an effort and disaster every time there was even a phone call to them. So, but my mother and I reunited, and it was, in a sense, it was pretty neat because my mother hurt like I am now, and I didn't realize the pain she was going through. So I was able to feel that pain, and but we just got right back on, as a mother and a daughter. That bond doesn't go away. It's funny how most of it stays there. You have some catching up to do, and it's like a long lost friend. It just, there's something strong there that stays.
Well, that's a beautiful note to end our show on. I believe that too. We are in essence still the same that we were when we were children, and our children are in essence going to be the same throughout the rest of their lives. And for these fathers to think that they can sever the mother-child bond is ridiculous. I mean, and I don't respect it.
They're underestimating us.
They're underestimating us, and they're underestimating the love between the mother and child. Like I always say, no pets and toys and candy and stepmothers trips to Hawaii can replace what a child feels for their mother. And let's pray for the souls of fathers who do this and for the people that help them. These people are seriously, they have some serious brain issues going on. Brain damage, personality disorders, I don't know, invasion by evil spirits, whatever you want to call it. But good luck to them and their karma. For us, things can only get better. That is the good news. So thank you for sharing your story on House for Children today, Marlena.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So
I hope the show will contribute to you reuniting with your children. Some of them are now at an age where they can hopefully find you on YouTube and watch this interview with you, so they finally hear your side of the story. And I hope they will seek you out. If your children are watching, you can also get in touch with me if you want to first talk. If you need to get in touch with Marlena, you can also find her on Facebook, and just, please do. There's no reason to wait with the healing process. We're here to help you, and we understand. So thanks again for sharing your story. It takes, courageous moms like you stepping forward and sharing your experience to bring awareness to our cause, and hopefully the multitude of shows that we're doing are going to contribute to real change, so this won't be happening to our daughters when they become mothers.
In our lifetime.
Right, in our lifetime. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for watching another episode of Hells for Children, and I hope you join me all again next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everybody.